In this video, we will demonstrate on how to draw these two drawings, the array part and the one on the right, using some modifying commands in AutoCAD. And I'll open my AutoCAD. Let's start with the first one here, the array. That would be, I'll just zoom in a bit. So let's start with this line. This length is 3999. So I'll use a different color for these guidelines. I created this layer. It's a red dash line with a line weight of 0.05 millimeters. And I'll be using that for the guidelines so that we can easily see it in the model. So I'll start with the line that would be 3999, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. And we have here sort of a square. 2828. That would be 45 degrees with respect to the horizontal. I'll zoom in this one. Click on that point. Our ortho mode is on, that's why we cannot freely move this. I'll turn it off by pressing F8 again. So we have here our line. I'll specify the length, and that would be 2828. And I'll press tab to control the angle, but the length will be constant. It will not be changed because it's locked at 2828. The angle is 45 degrees from the horizontal. And then we'll terminate at this point. I'll continue. This would be I'll just extend the line, and I'll control the angle. That would be 135. And I'll continue here at the end point, and again that would be 2828 at 45 degrees. I'll just trim this part, and we have your square. Next, we have these lines that is extending from the center at 45 degrees by 2984. So I'll draw that from the center, 2984. That would be 45 degrees. I would just extend this by 2984. Oops. This is stretch. The default is stretch, but I'll press Ctrl, so we will just be lengthening it by 2984. Okay. Why is it not? Okay, what I'll do is I'll introduce you to another command. It is Mokoro. It's a combination of move, copy, and rotate. So if you will notice in the previous videos that we have done, we use move, we use copy, and we use rotate different separately. And for this part, since I'll be copying this line and rotating it, I'll be having a hard time if I will use copy, rotate, and copy again, or and move. So for example, I'll copy this on this part. I'll rotate, let's say by and move it again to move it here, right? That's a tedious job, but then I'll try to delete it. If you're going to use Mokoro, we can have it in one command. Mokoro, combination of move, copy, and rotate. Press enter. I'll use the base point at the midpoint here. I'll be copying. I'll copy it on that same portion, and then I'll rotate. Enter. Now we have done it simpler, because if you will be rotating it right away, you cannot, this line here will automatically be rotated. It will not be retained. But for Mokoro, you can do this command. Alright, but we still have some more guidelines to do. That will be on the intersection of this line, the one extending the 2984 line, and the intersection of it in the square is the endpoint of this line up to the endpoint of the square portion. So we'll create that one, and same here. I'll do the same here on this part. And we have another from this line or this endpoint. It will terminate on this intersection. Okay, so we'll be doing that part. We can even extend up to this part. Let's just do it there. Oops. Hey. Can extend it here. I'll just have it here on that intersection. And last, so we have your guidelines. You are now ready to create the array. I'll change this into my 0.15 millimeter continuous line, and I'll set the current into that layer 0.15. I'll be deleting this one. We don't need anymore this one because we'll be arraying it this line. So for array, the command is AR, or you can type array. Press enter. You can either use a rectangular array, path array, or polar array. If we'll be using rectangular, for example, if I click on that, if you zoom out, you will have your array in rectangular pattern. And you can control the number of columns and number of rows here, number of levels, right? And even the spacing. But what if for example, I'll be creating an arc here. What if I will be arraying using a path? So if that's a path, I'll select the path curve and press enter. We can select the number of rows here. Let's say this would be 15. So you'll have your path. Okay. Else. You can even have this as 20 and this is 100. So you see, you have the array. But for our drawing, we'll be using the polar array. So for that one, array, polar, we can specify the center point. You can either rotate on this part, if let's try first here. If you'll be, or here at this point, if you'll be arraying on that one, we can control the number of items. That will be 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can change this one. Let's say 10. The fill angle would be, let's say, just a half of the 360, 180 for example. So it can be on that part only. For this one, we will be using it, or we'll be specifying the center of the array at the center or the midpoint of this line, because we will rotate it with respect to that point. And if you will notice on this drawing, I tried to count this one. This is 10. You can try to count it if you want to. This is also 10 from the center. So that would be, and there's an extra here that was deleted. So the total number of lines here would be 160. You don't need to change the angle in between because it will automatically change. If you change the items, the number of items for the polar array, you will automatically change the number. It will automatically change the number in between it, as long as you are specifying that you are going to rotate it in an array that is 360 fill. You can also, if you will check, okay, so we have your lines. The way we forgot to have that specific guideline, I'll just add it. This one. I'll be using Mokoro again. Or I can use array actually for that portion. Polar. I'll rotate it here. I want 4 items. And we have your guidelines. Now we can also array this one. Polar. Center is here also. And we can even change this into 160 again. Okay, so we're now ready. I forgot that part, our guidelines a while ago, so I had to change it again. So if you'll notice, the array here is only one object, but since we are going to trim this later on, actually the next step is to trim it already, we are going to explode the array for us to be able to trim it. So I'll explode this, since that is acting as one. We'll explode it so it will be converted into separate lines. So notice how it was, it's now separated as demonstrated by the highlight that is happening. So if you'll notice, if I'll select a portion here, it's actually nice to see, right? Okay, going back to our drawing, we'll now be starting to trim these parts. What I'll do is I'll trim the outside parts first. This is satisfying for me. Oops. I think I missed that part. It does not recognize my array here. I'll try to explode it also. Right. I'm starting at the corners here, the smaller lines or the smaller extensions, because it's harder to select those parts. I might actually click on some wrong items and I'll be wasting time. Alright, we have our lines trimmed. We are now ready to have some editing here on this part, because this is 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And we will delete the 11th from this edge. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So we'll delete this. And also from this part, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Alright, we can now further trim down the other parts. I'll select all of this so we can trim properly. I'll start on this part. I'll zoom in a bit so I can easily trim it. So let's check if we got it correct here. So it's alright. We can now just delete some of the guidelines and actually delete this part following the one in our image. What else do we need to delete? We'll delete this. Lines here. Alright, we have our first drawing. We'll be putting our dimensions later. I'm actually going to put it on our layout here already when we plot it. But for now, let's proceed with the second drawing. And that would be this one. It's like a tennis racket. I'll start with this line. When you're drawing, it's always easier to start, and it's actually the first step to start with the guidelines. Similar to drawing manually, start with guidelines. And I'll start with this horizontal line because we need to have these angles or the limit line here, because we will actually draw our circles using tangents later on. And I think we have discussed that part in the last video that I did, and I'll put the link on the description below for you to be able to check it. So I'll start with the horizontal. That's about 5,000 in length. Ortho on by F8. This is 5,000. Oops. Okay. And now a line that is 4,600 at 30 degrees and at 60 degrees. I'll press F8. This would be 4,600 at 30 degrees, and the other one would be still 4,600 at 60 degrees with respect to the horizontal. So we have our guidelines. Next step would be to change the layer that we'll be using. I'll use 0.15. We'll start with this part, where I'll try to use actually a thicker line. Try to use 0.4 millimeters and create a circle. The center or the radius of this circle is 300 millimeters, and we'll be using our circle or drawing our circle using 2 tangent lines and 1 radius. The first tangent line is this one, The second tangent is this, and the radius of the circle would be 300. So we have our first line. So I think it's a bit too thick. I'll try to create another layer, 0.3 millimeters. Continuous line. I'll just change the line weight here. Let's check if that would not be too thick. So it's still too thick. What if we'll create another layer, 0.25 millimeters. I think that's better. Okay, I'll just try to use 0.3. I'll change the current one into 0.3 now. Make sure this is 0.3 millimeters. Okay. And I'll create the outer layers first. The bigger circle here has a radius of 1000. And again, we'll be using tangent lines to create the circle. And that would be another circle, tangent, tangent, and the radius of 1000. So we have our bigger circle. Next, we'll have this circle with the radius of 2000 that is actually tangent to the smaller circle and the bigger circle with the radius of 1000. So what we are going to do is I'll create a circle again. This would be tangent on the two circles, and the radius would be 2000 for this time. And another one, another circle using that way, tangent, and then you have your circle. And I'll try to use trim to trim down Alright, we have now your outer layer. And if you will notice, the radius of these circles are decreasing by 100 each time. Also in this portion, from 1900 to 800. So this means that the spacing between these circles and these boundaries are 100. So what I will do is I will join this tree. I'll join it into a single object, right? It's now a single object because if you try to select it, select this portion, all the other parts are also selected. And we also need to join it for us to be able to offset this part, because you cannot offset it as a whole if it is exploded. So the opposite of explode is joining. So I'll now offset this one by a distance of 100. I'll actually change the layer of this one into 0.25. And I'll offset this again by 100, and we have your drawing. Okay, so we still need to create this hexagon inside of this smaller circle. So let's see if we can create a hexagon here by using that joined object. Number of sides would be 6. That's a hexagon. The center would be this portion. It's actually inscribed in a circle. And this would be your hexagon. Is it correct? It's not a hexagon. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's not a hexagon. 7. Center would be this part, inscribed in a circle. It's actually that. Alright, I'll change this layer into 0.25. And then we are now ready to hatch. Hatch are repetitive patterns of line to represent a surface of a specific material. Use hotkey H and click on the inside boundary that would hold the patterns when set. Then set the materials. We can actually use hatch. I actually use this in drawing or coloring certain objects as long as they are in a boundary, because you cannot color on a part wherein there is no boundary. Boundary mean that is an enclosed space, and we can do that on this middle part, on this middle lining, because that is an enclosed space. We join this before offsetting, and we can actually do a hatch on that part. So if you click on that inner area, okay, I used this color before, that's why it's the default here. But then it's specified here that we will hatch a net at an angle of 30 with a scale of 25. So this is an angle. The angle is 30 degrees. And the scale is 25. Alright, I'll just change this layer because this is 0.3. Change it to 0.15. Let's check it again. Angle is 30, scale is 25. Notice how this changes if you change the angle. I think the angle here is not 25 or not 30. I think it is 160. Alright, I'll close this one. Right, that is our image. Okay, we are now actually ready to put dimensions. I'll try to place a dimension to see if our default here will be having can be seen. I'll use my dimension layer, and I think the dimension cannot be seen because that is very small. I will try to create a new layer for the dimension or a new dimension style. I'll try to use, let me check the dimensions here. I'll modify or I'll create a new dimensions with the height of with text heights equal to 100 millimeters. Of course, we need to change the text style. We'll create also a new text with 100 millimeter. We'll select that angle or text and click OK. I'll set this as current. Right, let's try to use that for our dimensions. And notice how it's already visible. It's too big, I guess. I think we need to change it. Change the dimension into 80 millimeters. So this one is better. If you notice, the text is too close to the line. I'll create or I'll edit this dimension style. I'll modify it and here. The offset from the dimension line, I think, should be at least 10 millimeter. Okay, it's now moved. Further changing it into at least 20. Right, so we can see it clearly and better. So that is our dimensions. So, alright, we're now done. We are ready to place it in the plot here. So I'll select another my layer for the invisible layer, which is visible. That's not actually printable. If you will check my layers here, it's not plottable, it's not printable, but it's visible, and it has a line width of 0.00, very thin. So don't forget to change that, use that layer. And I think it's on this part only. Okay, so now I'll be introducing you to another command that would be zoom, for you to be able to know the scale that you are using. So for this one, if you enter zoom command, enter, and if you notice there, we are asked to specify the corner of window, enter a scale factor, nx or nxp. So that would be, so since I want in our model here, this is I think 1:40. Our scale is 1:40. Our zoom would be 1/40 xp. Enter. So it will be zoomed in that zoom factor. Create another multi-view on the second part. That would be here. And what is that? The scale there is 1:30. So I'll zoom 1/30 xp. Enter. So we have our drawing here. Plus, we forgot to place the leader of our hatch here. That is hatch pattern. Net. Angle is actually 160. And the scale is 25. So it's already visible on that part. I'll save the drawing and we are now ready to plot it. Again, I'm plotting to PDF and I'm using the window. And we're done.